The Afghan mountains glowed under the morning sun. Golden light, long shadows, a silence that felt heavy. Dr. Sarah Martinez checked her medical kit one last time. Her hands moved fast, practiced. Bandages, IV bags, morphine. Every piece of life-saving gear had its place. She had done this hundreds of times before. At just 28, Sarah was already a veteran. 3 combat tours, more than 200 lives saved. But today, something felt different. "Doc, you ready?" The voice came from Lieutenant Commander Jake Sullivan, the SEAL team leader. His face told a story of countless missions, wrinkled, weathered, eyes always sharp, blue eyes that never stopped scanning the horizon. Sarah nodded and lifted her heavy pack. It felt familiar now, like an old friend, but inside wasn't just gear. It was hope. It was survival. This mission was simple, at least on paper. Find a Taliban commander, capture him, extract before dawn. Her role? One job only: keep the team alive. The SEALs moved like shadows across the rocky ground, hand signals, silent gestures, a brotherhood built on years of training. Mike Rodriguez, the radio man, carried their lifeline to base. Tom Anderson, demolitions. Expert, scanned for hidden traps. Danny Kim, young, sharp-eyed, everyone called him Hawkeyes. Carlos Santos, master of urban warfare, never lost his calm. And David Thompson, the sniper. A legend whispered about in every corner of special operations. One rifle, one shot, no mistakes. Sarah had worked with SEALs before, but this team felt different. They treated her not just as a medic, but as one of them. They shared stories, meals, fears. Rodriguez showed her photos of his newborn. Anderson taught her how to throw a knife. Santos bragged about his grandmother's tamales. And Thompson, the quiet sniper, had surprised her the most. One night, he had opened a rifle case she'd never seen before. Inside lay a pristine sniper, rifle, every part handpicked. "Doc," he said in his soft Texas drawl, "sometimes saving lives means doing whatever it takes." Sarah shook her head. "I'm a medic. I save lives. I don't take them." Thompson just smiled. "You've got steady hands, sharp eyes. That's all a sniper really needs." And so, early mornings before dawn, he trained her. Breath control, patience, precision. She learned to feel her heartbeat, to pull the trigger as gently as inserting an IV. It felt wrong, but also strangely natural. Thompson made her see it differently. Surgery or shooting, it's the same. One mistake and someone dies. Still, she promised herself, she was a healer, she would never need that rifle. Now, as the village came into view, her mind went back to the mission. Mud brick homes, smoke from cooking fires. Children's laughter carried on the wind. It looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Sullivan raised his fist. "Halt." The team spread out, ready to move. Quick, silent, efficient. Sarah checked her radio again. She whispered a short prayer. Not for herself, but for whoever she might need to save. Then it happened. The first gunshots tore the morning apart like thunder. Muzzle flashes lit up windows. Bullets cracked against walls. An ambush. "Contact! Contact!" Rodriguez's voice screamed through the radio. The SEALs scattered, firing back. The peaceful village had turned into a war zone in seconds. "Doc, we've got wounded!" Anderson shouted. 20 meters away, Danny Kim was down, blood soaking his shoulder, his face pale, terrified. The fearless scout looked like a child seeing death for the first time. Sarah didn't think. She ran. Bullets ripped the dirt around her feet. Her med bag slammed against her side as she slid beside Kim. "You're gonna be fine, Danny. Stay with me," she whispered. Her hands worked fast. The bullet had torn muscle but missed arteries. Painful, but survivable. Then another voice cut through the chaos. "Santos is hit too," Thompson yelled, firing at shadows in the windows. Sarah patched Kim, then crawled to Santos, a bullet in his leg, heavy bleeding. He clenched his teeth. "How bad, Doc?" "You'll live," she said firmly, "but you're not running anywhere today." But as she worked, she saw it. The situation was collapsing. 30 Taliban fighters had them pinned. The extraction bird was 30 minutes away. Ammo was running low. And Thompson, the one man who could shift the battle, was trapped. "I can't get him," Thompson shouted, frustration in his voice. "The enemy snipers got us zeroed from that minaret." Sarah looked up, and for the first time that day, her heart froze. Sarah's eyes lifted toward the tower, a tall minaret overlooking the entire village, and there, barely visible movement. Her heart sank. An enemy sniper. From that high ground, he could kill them one by one. "Distance?" she asked, surprising even herself with the question. "About 400 meters," Thompson replied. "High position, partial concealment, not an easy shot." Sarah's mind flashed back. Early morning lessons. Thompson's calm voice explaining wind speed, bullet drop, breathing. Back then it felt like theory. Now, it was survival. Anderson crawled over, dirt smearing his face. "Doc, how are they?" "Kim's stable. Santos needs evac, but he'll live." Her eyes stayed locked on the tower. Every muzzle flash from that sniper meant death creeping closer. Anderson shook his head. "Rodriguez is trying to call in air support, but we're too close to civilians, no chance." Sarah felt it. The truth hitting hard. They were on their own. Trapped. Outnumbered. Outgunned. The sniper fired again. The team was pinned. Every second they stayed down, their odds got worse. Sarah turned to Thompson. His hands were steady, reloading with the calm of experience. "Chief," she said, voice firmer than she expected. "I need the backup rifle." Thompson froze. His eyes met hers, surprised but not questioning. Both of them knew the truth. The training they'd done in secret was about to be tested. "Doc, are you sure?" he asked softly. Sarah's gaze swept over the battlefield. Sullivan bleeding but still leading. Rodriguez shouting into his radio. Anderson handing out the last of their ammo. Kim barely clinging on. Santos fighting pain just to stay upright. Her oath as a medic echoed in her head. Do no harm. But right now, protecting life meant taking it. "I'm sure." Thompson didn't argue. He reached into his pack and handed her the rifle. Sarah's hands trembled as she assembled it. Click, lock, adjust. Every movement guided by muscle memory. Her heart was racing, but her training steadied her. The rifle rested against the wall. Cold, heavy, deadly. Like a surgeon's scalpel, it demanded precision. Thompson leaned close, his voice calm. "Remember, breathing is everything. In, out, pause, then squeeze." She peered through the scope. The world narrowed to a circle of glass. The tower leapt into focus. She saw him now, the sniper, hidden behind stone, exposing himself for only seconds. Her pulse slowed. Her thoughts sharpened. This wasn't just shooting. This was surgery at a distance. "He's got a rhythm," Sarah whispered. 15 seconds between shots. Always shows his left shoulder first. Thompson gave a small nod. "That's it, Doc. Use it." Around them, the battle raged on. Sullivan shouting orders. Anderson tossing spare mags. Rodriguez screaming into the radio. The helicopter was still 20 minutes away. Sarah tuned it all out. Her world was the scope. Her breath, her heartbeat, the enemy's pattern. There he was again, rifle raised, aiming straight at Sullivan. Her crosshairs found him. Her voice was a whisper only she could hear. Breathing controlled, target acquired. Her finger pressed the trigger. Slow, steady, crack. The recoil pushed against her shoulder. Through the scope, she watched him fall back, his weapon clattering against stone. Then nothing. Silence. The effect was instant. The Taliban fighters lost their edge. No sniper overwatch, no advantage. The SEALs surged back, firing harder, pushing them out. But Sarah, she didn't move. She just stared at the empty tower, her chest tight, her hands shaking. She had crossed the line, the medic who saved lives who had just taken one. Thompson's hand rested gently on her shoulder. "Clean shot, Doc. Textbook perfect." His words felt far away. She had saved her team. But something inside her had changed forever. Then came the sound. Rotors. The helicopter. Finally. Dust and wind whipped through the village as the bird descended. The Taliban fighters, broken and disorganized, fled into the mountains. "Doc." "Time to go!" Sullivan shouted, half carrying Santos toward the chopper. Sarah snapped back into motion. She broke down the rifle, hands moving automatically, packed her med gear, helped Kim to his feet. Every step felt heavy. They moved together toward the bird, wounded but alive. The mission was over, but for Sarah, the real battle was just beginning. The night was colder than usual, the kind of cold that crept beneath the skin, into the bones, into the soul. The campfire flickered at a distance, its glow lighting up faces of soldiers who laughed, who teased, who shared their stories as if the war outside didn't exist. But she sat away from them. Her shadow stretched long and lonely on the ground. She wasn't part of their circle, not because she couldn't be, but because she had never truly been welcomed into it. Every medal pinned to her chest carried a memory. But those memories were not of pride. They were carved out of nights of silence, days of exhaustion, and moments where she almost gave up. She looked at her scarred hands. Every line told a story. The burns, the cuts, the bruises, each one was a chapter of survival. Her mind drifted back to training days. She could still hear the sound of boots stomping in rhythm, the endless drills, the cruel laughter of her peers, and the instructors who shook their heads in doubt. She'll never make it. She's too fragile. She doesn't belong here. The words were daggers, but instead of breaking her, they carved her into steel. She remembered the first time she collapsed on the training field. Her knees gave out. Her body screamed for rest. The sun burned mercilessly overhead, and yet the voices around her were harsher than the heat. Some laughed, some pitied, none believed. But she got up, one knee first, then the other. Her legs trembled, her vision blurred, but she stood again. And in that moment, something inside her changed forever. Because weakness, she learned, wasn't about falling. Weakness was about refusing to rise, and she refused. Always. Now, years later, she found herself standing before the very same kind of men who doubted her back then. The commander's voice rang through the camp. Step forward. She walked. Her boots struck the ground with a steady beat. Thud, thud, thud. Each step was a reminder. Each step was a statement. Each step silenced another whisper in the crowd. The fire crackled, but no one laughed now. The air was so still that even the night seemed to hold its breath. She stood before them, her uniform battered, her face marked with the trials of war, but her eyes held an unshakable fire. "I am still here," she said. Her words weren't shouted, but they carried more weight than a battle cry. The silence that followed was deafening. Her voice had cut through years of doubt, through the invisible wall that had always separated her from them. The men who once sneered now lowered their eyes. A few clenched their jaws, unable to face the truth she had spoken. And the commander, hardened, unshaken, feared by many, stood frozen, his expression stripped of arrogance. Because in that moment, they didn't just see her as a soldier. They saw her as a survivor. A warrior who had endured storms they could never imagine. A fighter who had been broken and rebuilt more times than anyone could count. Her strength wasn't in her muscles. It wasn't in her weapon. It wasn't in the stripes on her sleeve. Her strength was in her heart. In her refusal to quit when quitting would have been easier. In her determination to carry the weight of the battlefield when no one thought she could. That night, she didn't just win their silence. She won their respect, and for the first time she wasn't invisible. She wasn't too weak. She wasn't a mistake. She was everything they claimed she could never be, and more. Sarah never fought her battles alone. Yes, she carried a rifle. Yes, she carried a medic's bag. But inside, she carried questions no weapon could answer. The military gave her tools, but the psychologists gave her something deeper, ways to survive the weight of her choices. Because the hardest part wasn't pulling the trigger. The hardest part was living with it. Sarah learned something important. Sometimes saving lives meant taking one, and sometimes the only way to heal was to fight. It was a cruel truth, but it was also the truth that kept her sane. Through it all, Thompson stood by her side. He was more than a teacher now. He was a friend, a confidant, the only one who truly understood what it meant to carry death in one hand and life in the other. Their talks weren't about tactics. They were about humanity, about the fragile line between duty and morality. Thompson's words stayed with her. The hardest part isn't the shooting. It's remembering why you're shooting. The day you stop asking why is the day you've lost yourself. Sarah carved those words into her heart. Every mission, every shot, every life saved. She remembered her why. And when the guns were silent, Sarah returned to where her journey had begun. Medicine. In the base clinic, she treated coughs, cuts, sprains. Simple things, human things. Those moments reminded her of who she was before. The war twisted her path. Not just a fighter, not just a sniper, but a healer. Slowly, something new was born inside her. A blending of worlds no one thought could exist. A medic with the precision of a warrior. A sniper with the heart of a doctor. She began teaching others her methods. How to heal under fire, how to save a life while fighting for your own. Her techniques spread. Soon, survival rates rose across entire units, and for the first time, Sarah wasn't just respected, she was needed by her commanders, by her peers, by families whose loved ones returned home because of her. But the recognition that mattered most? It wasn't the medals, it wasn't the commendations, it was the quiet nod of trust from the men and women she served beside, the ones who would follow her into fire without hesitation. Sarah Martinez had entered the war as a combat medic. She came out as something new, something no one had words for, a healer, a warrior, a living contradiction that proved both could exist in one soul. 2 years passed, and Sarah returned to the same base where her life had changed forever. But now, she carried new insignia, new authority, new purpose. She was no longer just surviving, she was leading. 12 students stood before her, combat medics from across the military, all chosen, all gifted, all struggling with the same impossible question she once had. How do you save lives, and when sometimes you must take them? Her voice carried across the range. Remember, breathing control isn't just about your shot. The same calm hand that pulls a trigger is the same steady hand that saves a life. The students listened. Some were natural shooters who feared their own humanity slipping away. Others were natural healers who trembled at the thought of killing. But Sarah, she was proof it was possible to be both. And standing beside her, Thompson, her old mentor, now her partner, teaching the next generation of warrior healers together. Among the students was Lisa Chen, a former nurse, now a combat medic. Her hands had once rocked children to sleep. Now those same hands gripped a sniper rifle with deadly precision. She asked the question every student eventually asked, how do you live with both, healing and killing? Sarah walked to her side, looked her in the eye, and answered, the mission is always the same, protect life. When you hold a scalpel, you're fighting death. When you hold a rifle, you're fighting those who cause it. Different tools, same purpose. Chen nodded. Her heart understood. Her hands grew steadier. That day, Sarah saw her old self in her. Students, the doubt, the struggle, the fire waiting to be lit. And she smiled, because she knew they were ready to walk the same path. Word of her program spread. Other nations wanted it. Commanders praised it. Ethicists questioned it. But Sarah knew one truth. When you understand both life and death, you make better choices about both. And so, when orders came for her to train Allied forces overseas, she accepted with pride. Her mission was no longer just hers. It belonged to the world. That night, Sarah returned to the base chapel, the same place where she once cried out, lost and broken. The chaplain greeted her with a smile. "How does it feel?" he asked. "To know you're shaping the future of military medicine across the world?" Sarah closed her eyes, searching for the right words. Finally, she whispered, "It feels like responsibility. To teach warriors to never forget their humanity." The chaplain nodded. "That has always been the hardest part." Sarah walked out into the night, the weight of her journey heavy but not unbearable. She had started as a medic. She had been reshaped as a sniper. Now she was something greater. Not destroyed, not divided, but expanded. A warrior healer. Proof that sometimes the most powerful way to honor our values is to carry them into places no one thought they could survive.